Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Jim and Rob Over-Analyze the Movies, the home of the best chat on the internet, the podcast where we love to go above and beyond the review to get to the craft, the story, and the meaning of the films we watch today. Today we are going to be looking at CODA. CODA. It's called CODA. From IMDb, here's the log line. As a CODA, child of deaf adults, Ruby is the only hearing person in her deaf family. When the family's fishing business is threatened, Ruby finds herself torn between pursuing her love of music and her fear of abandoning her family. Anyway, that's what we're looking at today. And but before we get into it, I think it's time to welcome our regular co-host back, my partner in crime, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How you doing, my friend?
Good. I feel like Sam Gamgee, and I've returned home. Back to the round door and the messy study and what have you.
Yikes. We're so not on final thoughts. Sorry about that. It's like, it's like I'm in a big rush to finish the show. Anyway, what are your final thoughts?
In conclusion,
although I suppose we could just call this this whole video, I'm not crying, you're crying. Although that might be a bit of a spoiler. And we're not in the spoiler zone. Yeah.
Dust and onions. I don't know. Just combine a bunch of different things like that. But how's it going?
Pretty good. Are you getting back into the groove of Winnipeg? You're out in BC for a good 6 weeks, eh?
About a month. Close. I left on the 13th. I came back on the 15th, I think. So.
Oh, okay. So almost 5 weeks.
Yeah. No, it was definitely not the summer I had been anticipating, but it's always good to. I mean, the best part of the deal was it's good to connect with the former hometown, and a lot of friends that I have there just picked up. It's like they say, riding a bicycle, that old cliche, and you're just back into talking about the same things, and just nothing's changed. A little bit of hair and wrinkly bits and facial, that kind of thing. But it was really good to reconnect with some of my old friends, most of whom were just okay, what time, say when, we'll go out. And so that was kind of
fantastic.
Part of that too is it's that it was my first real sort of experience with post COVID of any kind, and people are still wearing masks and things like that, but more they're going outside, and a lot of people that I know are double vaxxed, etc. And so they're still careful, but it was almost like I could see the start of the after COVID world. And it was quite nice. It was the most social I'd been in a long time. So that was one of the benefits of going out there. So
have you? Now, other than the movies we've watched for this show, have you had a chance to see anything? Are you planning on seeing anything soon?
Yeah, I figure I haven't been to a theater yet. I keep promising my wife that we'll go to one. So it's tomorrow, and about the only there's a lot of East Indian movies Indian movies playing in town, which is kind of cool. But I think we've nailed it down to, still haven't seen Green Knight yet, but we might do that, because to me that seems like a theater movie. And either that or Free Guy. I imagine Free Guy just had its second week in a row of #1, so it'll be around for a while. So I might want to, I think Green Knight's only the late show right now, but it seems like a big, like a theater movie to me.
Yeah, of the two, Jim, having seen both, Free Guy could. Will you get more out of it in the theater? Yes, but would you be ripping yourself off terribly if you waited until it came to Netflix or Disney? No, not at all. Mm-hmm. Nope. Whereas Green Knight, you might as well get the full effect.
Yeah.
Because they do.
Go ahead.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, just might do. I think we're leaning towards Green Knight anyway, just for the spectacle. For the spectacle. But
The
yeah.
spectacle.
Other than that, while I was in Vancouver, I went through Ted Lasso, the first season, a second time. And then when I got back here, I've been trying to convince the ladies of the household, my wife and my daughter, to watch it because it's not all about soccer. It's about the human relationships that form at a workplace that happens to be a soccer club. And
while still being a sport show.
Yes, yeah.
The field is not an excuse to have a comedy.
Yes, yeah. No, it's
sorry.
I think it's a fairly organic in its approach there. But anyway, we watched one episode, and 5 hours later, we were on. So you have to watch
that show, right?
We have to. I thought, okay, we'll watch until the fifth episode. We'll watch half of them, and they're like, oh, you know what? Let's make Rebecca great again as number 7. That's a good episode too. So maybe we'll watch 6, then 7, and then leave the next 3 for tomorrow night. That didn't happen. We watched the end of them, went right to the end, 5 hours of Ted Lasso. A little bit much, but it's such a great show. And I got to see their reaction to it. My daughter loves Roy Kent now, and that was that was
and
fun
it
to
goes. Those episodes go down so easy, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not there's no aftertaste.
No,
there's no burning kind of. You just go, wow, that was just a really nice beer.
Yeah. And there's none of that tedious side quest stuff that you sometimes get from a TV show. Like you're like, oh, not this part. Let's just fast forward. You don't get that at all. It moves well. It's cut well. I forgot that certain, somebody's talking and it's overlaid on top of somebody doing something else. Like the whole, when Roy Kent confronts Jamie in the club and he headbutts one of the players and he says, stay away from Knight. And that somebody's talking above him. And I tended to forget that. But they I think that's one thing they use to cram a lot in is that they have sort of voice going on in some other scene on top of something that's happening immediately in front of you, and that's one of the ways is they gets a lot in any given episode. So
without how do you like to put it, without feeling overstuffed.
Just nicely done. But
no, couldn't agree more. I'm glad you finally got your spouse and your daughter on that train.
Yeah, they loved it. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, why don't we get into this movie?
You bet.
As I said before, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah, that's about it, isn't it?
Okay, I'll let me crank this machine up. I'll put you off for a second here. Okay, folks, just to set this show up, let me move out of the way for you. Okay, yes, the movie's name, CODA. Giving you the log line. This was written and directed by Sian Heder, or Heder, but I believe it's Heder. I'm not 100% sure of the pronunciation of the woman's name. She also wrote it. It's actually an adaptation of a French film, La Famille Bélier. And that I'm actually quite confident of my pronunciation on, which both I'm proud and ashamed of. It stars Emilia Jones as the CODA, the eponymous CODA, Ruby. It also stars Eugenio Derbez, Troy Kotsur, Ferdia Walsh-Peelo, Daniel Durant, and of course Marlee Matlin. The basic gig of this film, the hook, the thing about this film, it's a coming of age film. It is about Ruby. She is the child of, she's a teenager, a senior in high school. Also it's her mom, her dad, her brother. She is the only hearing person in the family. So not only is she kind of depended on for labor on the family fishing boat. This is set in coastal Massachusetts, but also as the sort of be-all interpreter for the family, especially in business dealings with the middlemen of the buyers at the one and only fish market in town. The Amazon of fish buying in their town. Of course, she is also a high school senior with all that entails, crushes on boys, bullies, that kind of nonsense. And it is in this milieu that on the spur of the moment, because of a boy she has a crush on, she sort of jumps into an elective choir. And because there's this boy who's in it, and the teacher there, his character's name, Bernardo Villalobos, he kind of pulls out her voice, and we found she can really sing. So that kind of sets it off. Meanwhile, there's a B plot about the economic viability of the fishing boat, of their family's economic viability, because them and every other fishing family within the community is getting squeezed. On the one hand, squeezed by the buyers who keep kind of bringing down the price they'll give for their catch. And then they're squeezed on the other side by the federal government and the regulators who keep screwing around with quota, adding on extra costs, user fees, basically, this kind of thing. So there's that sort of B plot as they try and resolve that. As far as this film's social nutrition checklist, we've got, does it earn the reframe stamp? Whoops, not an X. Yes, I believe this will. Although it isn't on their website yet, I actually dove deep. I was super excited. I dove deep and I found that I think it meets their criteria. Is it union made? As a matter of fact, not only is it union made, this is the most union logos I've ever seen at the end of a screen of a credit roll ever. So yes, it is union made. Does it pass the Bechdel test? Was the Pope once Polish? And last but certainly not least, is this a film with class consciousness? I am proud to say, yes, it doesn't just touch on it. This isn't an honorable mention. It just doesn't touch on class consciousness. It just mashes that class conscious button. So this is Jim. I want to say this is like the first time we've been ever able. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks.
I felt that it had earned a sound effect.
Absolutely, it definitely did. Yeah, this is a 100% film, and I am just so jazzed. We finally got one of those, and I do believe this is the first time. Yeah, first time, and clear in every area. You know what? Like I've not where it's like kind of, well, yeah, it's close enough, or none of that. It's all, or I think it will, or I'm pretty sure, or even on the Bechdel test, it's not just one scene, it's several scenes. Mm-hmm. It just, it was a real sweetheart. It was nice to see that score come out.
Yeah. It wasn't belabored. It was just a natural sort of organic. The second time I've used organic, but a natural sort of result of all the ingredients together in this movie. Strong female characters, or important female characters that have more than a half dozen lines, for instance.
Yeah. So I think this is before we move forward into a quick review, why don't we take a quick bit? We've got some folks in the chat, including our once and future king of the Balmoral Street Research Regulars, or at least he's here now, so he's the king. Good old Walt Vlad 65. How you doing, my friend?
Yay, West Coast representing.
That's right. Okay, we also have Mr. Curtis Judd. How you doing, Curtis?
Yay. Park City, boy.
Oh, and look at this. Here's an interesting. Okay, so Walt is saying he's missing you, Jim, already being out there on the coast. And he's also thinking of going to see The Green Knight tomorrow. Be interesting to see what you guys both say.
Yeah.
And Park City boy. That's right.
There we go.
Good one. Excellent. All right, so we've got some folks in the chat, which is always nice to see, and I think it's time to move forward, Jim?
Yeah.
I think I don't think I've missed anything until we get into our little quick review, eh?
No, I think
Yeah.
I think we got it. We got the ingredients this time. Yeah, so that's good.
All right. Oh, I'll say one more thing before. You know what? This is something that we always leave, or now I'm starting to forget these things. Folks, if you could slap a like on this now while you're here, we'd appreciate that. We'll bug you for the rest of the stuff later. All right. Quick review, Jim.
Well,
what's your take?
Couple surprises here. Going into it, the basic ingredients, title, a little bit of the background of it, that it involves the deaf community, the hearing female daughter of the family, Marlee Matlin. It's nice to see her again, although I believe she's worked pretty regularly over the years. For a music movie, I think that every movie has a hook. Like, why are we watching this? What is the hook? What is the new thing here? And I think it's like a more dedicated perspective from the deaf community, actually. And so as a result, a lot of this movie, and it's funny that Curtis, the sound guy, is here. It's not all silent, but this is probably the quietest music movie that and I thought that was a really ballsy choice. At the end, there's sort of a climax where not sort of a before the actual. There's I don't want to. Are we in spoilers?
No, we're nowhere near that.
Okay,
just give us your quick review.
There's a concert, and right in the middle, they go into silence. Like the music just fades.
So there's a big spoiler for you, folks.
Well, not the spoiler in terms of plot, but just in terms of that, and the reason why I bring that up is because I thought it was a super brave choice. So a lot of the times where, part of the dramatic effect of drama is when you have these raised voices. I mean, that's what's an Oliver Stone movie without people screaming at each other? This one, you don't have.
It's the barbecue of movies where everyone's screaming at each other.
Yeah, and you don't get that. You don't get that extra audio punch, right? So instead, you have these people signing, but in silence, and you hear their hands slapping together when they're being really emphatic. And I thought that was a really interesting, brave choice, something I hadn't seen before. And that's kind of the hook for me was that it seemed to be dedicated to the deaf community's point of view. Whether or not it was, I'm not a member of the deaf community, obviously, but I thought it was kind of a brave, gutsy choice and quite interesting. But other than that, who's cutting onions? It had a nice emotional impact at the end. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this one.
Yeah, me too, Jim. I was at moments. It is a coming of age film. It is that kind of slice of life, or that slice of life coming of age film where we really do know the road most of the viewers know the road this girl is on. Mm-hmm. It's that there is those moments of just sheer horror of being embarrassed by your parents.
Oh yeah.
Just the embarrassment of being the focus in a classroom, that the wanting to be invisible yet wanting to be noticed. Do you act? Don't you act? Who am I about? Is the thing I really like, am I any good at it? All that stuff. So there's that feeling of poignancy, that personal nostalgia, the nostalgia for the road we have already been down on, and we may have made different choices than this kid has under different circumstances, but there's still that feeling. There's feelings of anger. You get upset when she or her family's getting upset. You laugh at the right times because some of it's just funny. Like they really make some interesting choices on, her friend, her sex positive buddy.
Yeah.
And so you get all these feelings, and at the end, you're absolutely right. They play with the climax. Usually the climax is that big showstopper. And then they don't. It's not at the big show. It's because you really run the risk with a movie like this where it's like, am I really just watching Glee with a couple of, but she's the child. Here's the interesting point of departure. She likes to sing, but the family's deaf. It's like, what am I watching? The SCTV version of the jazz singer, except it's the cantor, they don't fall into that trap. You're right. Like, I would argue it isn't so much a music movie as it is how do you experience these things if you cannot hear? Mm-hmm. And how do you communicate these things to people who can't hear? And vice versa. What am I missing because I am not viewing the world the same way as a deaf person is? Is there something I'm missing? I think it's all of that. At the end, I got misty. I got choked up. It ends on a beautiful note. It all feels earned. Yeah, it's just a beautiful, sweetheart little flick. And I'm going to say this now, although I'll get in more details later. I'm going to say this now. One more reason I can hate on Nomadland. Because here is a film with nobodies in it. And Marlee Matlin is the only name. And no one's going, we can put 100 million on Marlee Matlin. That'll fill the theater. There are people that are knowing you're going, wow, this is, and they managed to make it beautiful, on location. It all felt real and union made. And class conscious, like properly class conscious. At no time were these, you know what? F Nomadland, this is the movie that went where it could, where Nomadland wouldn't, and managed to do it with a union crew. So I'm like, I can't love on this movie enough. It is now currently my favorite film of the year.
Oh yeah, okay.
I gotta allow more room, but at least favorite film of the year to date for this year. Okay. Yeah. On that note, why don't I give I'll start with this. Just further, you bet it's worth your time, folks. And I would say, here's the thing to expect is that you will, if you're open to it, if you're open to it, you will. It'll get you here, and it is interesting how easily you can empathize with these people, even though you don't share all of their experiences. You don't have to be a working class kid who's heard your parents talk about money and that stress to understand the stress these people are under. You don't need to be a CODA or a deaf person to get what everyone's going through. It does that so fucking well.
Yeah.
Damn, it's worth your time. You, Jim?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. And even sort of walking the walk when she comes into school. I mean, I remember in, the shame of not having had a shower that morning, just the little things when you're a teenager, and her working on a boat. I don't know if you've ever worked with fish before.
Well, no, but I've worked in a chicken plant.
Yeah, yeah.
Same idea.
And
Disgusting.
you're quite different than the mean girls at the other end of the cafeteria. There would be a difference, and yeah, I got that. Like, she was dressed a little different. She was obviously falling asleep. Her hair was all over the place. I mean, they sort of really, that seemed kind of genuine. You could tell even visually that she'd
They
had
do a
different
reasonably
kind of
good job to dress down a very pretty young woman.
Yes, yeah.
To make her look
Yeah.
average and insecure.
Yes, yeah. But no, is it worth our time, or is it worth your time? Absolutely, yeah. It's a great film. Yeah, we'll get into other parts of it, but I thought it was. I didn't sort of think a lot about it beforehand. I mean, I knew of it, and I think I'd seen Sean Jackson, I think, review it.
He came on our show and put it on his list as a recommend, and
yeah.
So
I was aware of it from that point of view, but yeah, it sort of snuck up on me. Its effectiveness. So yeah.
I will. Okay, we're in the spoiler zone now. We're moving forward. That said, why don't we take we did get the chat was going for a bit there. Couple of comments from Walt. It's interesting. It is a French film, and later on I'll speak to that. Speak to how we can see it. But Walt's saying, Vlad65 saying, and the film used deaf actors for deaf characters, avoiding the flack of the French original. I did not know the French original did not use deaf actors. That surprises me a little, because it's such a, well, maybe that's our cue to watch the French original, just to see the kind of capture that essence. He also does, Walt also, he agrees with you about the sudden silence. He also talks about that not punching up the Hollywood ending. There is no, they never, I want to put a pin on this comment, Jim, because I think in each part, craft, like all the way through our little analysis steps, I think we could bring this up and go, here's another moment they didn't do what Hollywood usually does.
Yeah.
And now he's just taking the piss. All right. Okay, Jim. Do you want to start us off with talking about craft?
Yeah, sure. Having said all that, there are certain things that I was sort of curious about. I think I need to actually watch it again. There's in terms of craft, some of the roles I thought were played a little bit broad at first. The music teacher kind of reminded me of when John Lovitz was voicing the character on The Simpsons that directs Streetcar Named Desire. Because, I want to turn you from a bunch of Springfielders into white hot grease fires of light, and
the review play was enjoyed by all. That's everything.
So that was Bernard, Mr. Mr. Villalobos, and he came across as a little bit. I even kind of rolled my eyes a little bit at the start, because he
I was a little worried.
That pretentious, kind of over the top with his meditation and a few other things. I think he grew into the role. He's a comedic actor. I was reading a little bit about him, and he's got quite a career in Mexico. But I thought he came across as a little broad at first, and as the movie went on, whether it was my perception or the way they filmed it, it tightened up, I think, quite a bit. So he sort of toned it down. At the very end, when he's accompanying her at the Berklee School of Music, he's pretty low key. Yeah. And even Marlee Matlin, I thought, came across as a little broad at first, and then that kind of got a little toned down. What what happened in this movie, there was about 2 or 3 scenes in the middle, which were those beautiful, long, breathing scenes. It allowed the characters to come out. There was one between Ruby and Mr. V. There was one between Ruby and her mom. And there was a third one. And I was sort of into the movie, so I didn't write it down. But there was it took its time in this movie. And I think those scenes allowed the characters to sort of grow a little bit. And that sort of, it all came together in the end. There's that one last scene that she had with Marlee Matlin, just sitting in her bedroom talking, I thought was really, really nice. So yeah, they for me, and I was looking at another review saying, it started off a little bit, wasn't sure where it would go. And it over the course of the movie, it really did come together. And I agree with that. And, by the end, I found it quite touching. I was watching the end of it, and my son came in from some sort of party at like 2:30 in the morning. I was like, how about those bears? Like just I'm wearing sunglasses in the living room. No, but it came together at the end. So there's that.
What did you say? Sand and smoke and dust, onions and dust.
Who's cutting those dusty onions? But in terms of other parts of the craft, I liked, I thought the singing was well handled. At no time did they attempt to blow you away with, like, she wasn't the second coming of, Aretha Franklin or anything. She had a talent and she had a voice, and Mr. V thought she should take advantage of this and get out of town.
Develop it.
Yeah. So at no time it wasn't like people were shocked. It's not a Tom Cruise movie. They weren't like, oh my God, she's the best singer ever. And that was nice too. And subsequently the music was, Both Sides Now and a few other songs that are powerful, but not sort of, they're not show off songs, I don't think necessarily. So the music I thought was well handled that way. In terms of filming it, fairly low key, light, you're more of the technical guy. So the color palette and all that kind of thing was nice, and it was shot on location. It felt subdued, and it felt like a fishing village to me. It didn't feel like a set of a fishing village or anything like that.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. I'm wondering, and this is just me speculating, because all of the characters seem to be really big at the beginning. Like you're talking about broad. I call them big. I'm wondering if part of that is to make us uncomfortable. Did they get toned down, or did we get used to them? Because I'm wondering if part of it was, but even if they did pull them back, like they were all big at the beginning, like really big. And so I don't think that's a performance choice. That was a director's choice.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's because they wanted to make sure we were, the filmmakers wanted to make sure we were off balance right away. That we were because it's right at the edge of cringe.
Yeah.
Which is, it's about this girl. And what is I mean, this is, I think it goes for most teenagers. I think there's probably more teenage girls that feel this way than teenage boys, in that just constantly notice me, don't notice me, please don't embarrass me, just don't. Yeah. Just if everyone could just stop and I can just silently go through, pick my moment that I may never pick. Like, I wonder if that was part of it, is just everything. Because there was another thing, going back to what you're talking about in sound, how she was the one who wanted silence at times. It was rude for her to listen to her things, but of course she can't concentrate because the rest of her family's making a racket, which is kind of a weird reversal. Like she's singing along with music that she's playing loudly because it's the only way she gets some alone time, some solitude. It's the only way she can cut out the noise, which I never even thought of until watching this movie. But the noise of a deaf home, it's not like they're It's like, well, throw it in. Who am I
Slamming
bothering?
doors, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like any of that stuff, right? The need to use percussion, to grab attention,
Yeah.
so that it feels in that. So I'm wondering if that's part of it, was to get us all into her frame of mind, because it is pulled back in time. So we don't feel like they're all ridiculous, That's
Yeah.
just, and it's only you pointing out the broadness, and like that all borderline cringe,
Yeah. Yeah.
like in myself. That was where I thought, I'm not just watching Glee with where the death thing is the hook.
Yeah.
Is this Glee? Thought Glee was dumb. I don't want to watch. Oh wait, this is not Glee at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more looking at it, especially with the Mr. V character, because he did grow him. Like at first, it did. I was kind of like, oh god, they're gonna, make hay with this character. But that's a good question whether or not we got used to him or it was an actual toned down situation. But
Jim, you there?
yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're saying that's a good question. I thought you were gonna.
Yeah, no. So ultimately, I suspect it was a little bit toned down because he didn't throw all that sort of like, oh, I'm meditating, oh, shut up, and that kind of that initial cattiness. I mean, he still was kind of catty, but I felt that as the movie went on, he became more believable and.
Because they didn't dive into caricature.
Yes, yeah.
Heck,
which they could have. I mean, it was they could have.
So easy.
Yeah.
Like it would have just another step. And I really was, where it was like, well, what do you mean you're married with a kid? It's like, I thought for sure you were the gay music teacher.
Yeah, me too. Good luck in Gloucester, buddy.
But that I think was great.
Yeah.
That they, again, it's almost like they're playing with their own stereotypes.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned it before. I think for me, one of the big things, I think the performances were all wonderful. No one felt unreal. The only, and more of a story thing, so hopefully I'll remember it when we're talking about that. I bought everyone. This film reminded me, again, in that mundane, like it wasn't shot like a Dogma film, but it is a real,
right.
All these people are normal and real and there's no gunplay. I felt that but the other thing that I thought, performance is great. The music, you're right, it didn't go heavy. But yeah, the sound is as important as anything else. They're just talking about almost like the negative space. So again, going back to that, she's listening. She's got to put on her headphones because everyone's making a racket. But in part, that is, imagine if it wasn't filled up with yak, 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 yak. That's what we would hear. How noisy are our lives actually? I thought, the craft-wise, they knew, they understood. I don't know about you though, Jim. The one thing I did think of, especially during this, is like, what I will still say this, and I hope, good to see you here, Jelly Duck 100.
Hello.
And I'd love to hear Curtis's comment on this if he's seen the film. Much like yourself, Jim, I am in my 50s. I'm starting to use closed captioning a lot more. And I was using in this film, but some of it is that mix bias towards we're going to have all the sound, So there are times when it's like, can you just amp up the dialogue? And I don't think there's a part of me going, was that done on purpose here? No, I don't think it was. I think it's my age and the current flavor of mixing a film where it's like, well, dialogue is just one aspect of a film. And it's like, yeah, I still want to fucking hear it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hello,
that would be my
Christopher.
only craft quibble.
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly. I was thinking about Christopher Nolan, and when we're talking about it when making waves. Oh my goodness.
Holy cow. It's a
Our man in
reunion.
Chennai. We're around the globe, Jim. Around the globe.
The Netflix show Never Have I Ever, their family is originally from Chennai. I collect all these Chennai facts for when I see Shishak. It's just like, what? Chennai? So anyway.
Well, it's
Yeah.
good to see him. Good to see Ahmed. Curtis did comment on my question there. Okay. All right. He says, unfortunately, I haven't seen the film yet, but I will say that it drives me mad when the mix makes hearing the dialogue a job. Very much like Christopher Nolan films. And it all comes full circle.
Ah,
Yes. See, Curtis, a professional,
there you go.
a sound and video professional, understands our pain.
I wonder if Curtis would like this, knowing that he's in sound because of the way they handle sound in this, in the silences and things. I think he would sort of
I think you totally get it. Yeah.
would get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, it's not because it's not it's interesting. And the guy on the Wiki, well, let's I think he would find it interesting because it's still about sound.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And how people experience it. And it is there, it is thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, I would just like the dialogue bumped up a little more in the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says the concept of this film is fascinating to me. Curtis, this will reward you on a level even Jim and I won't capture. And strongly recommend it. Plus, it'll make you and Danny, and if your daughter's around, it'll make her cry too. Y'all a little weepy. Your little girl going away to college. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Weepy. So many things to cry over, while at the same time still being an interesting analysis of sound mixing.
Yeah. The other thing I should mention in terms of craft, I had forgotten that I had written in my notes. From what little I know of signing, it appears that the different characters, the father, the mom, and the son, all sign. Everyone has got different voices. They all sign in their own styles too.
Yeah.
And Leo, the brother, he's more wingy. His arms are sort of, he does a more almost an aerobic kind of signing. The dad's a little more fine tuned. And I am not pretending to sign. I'm just sort of giving a little bit of sense. And then Marlee Matlin's got her own sense of, I guess, mom signing. I'm not sure what that is, but that was kind of an interesting aspect of it too. Not that I could tell the difference, but I could sense that they signed differently, almost like people have different accents or something like that.
Yeah. Well, different turns of phrase.
Yeah.
Dad's incredibly vulgar.
The brother was pretty vulgar too.
Descriptive, but more in a eschatological, with his sister, what siblings do.
Yeah.
Talking shit to siblings, whereas Dad was very, vulgar and descriptive in it,
Yeah, and fart jokes and the whole bit. And
yeah. Well, dad jokes.
Yeah,
there was a dad joke if there ever was.
Yeah.
Yes, Curtis, you will need to be strategic when you watch it. But definitely watch it. Watch it sooner rather than later. I know, school's got to be, your daughter Emma's got to be returning to school soon, but yes, worth the time. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on then, Jim, unless there's anything you want to add as far as the craft goes.
No, I think the most of it, comes up in story. There's some of my other notes there. So we can proceed.
All right. Jim, on story, this something you said about acting and dialogue and belting it out, and that makes me think about this a little differently now. There's a couple of things I want to bring up. It's pretty straight. It does have a beginning. There's you can break it down. It's not a mess. It's not episodic. It's not any of these things. I was wondering, and this is a question I'll ask you now, but hang on and answering it. First, I wanted to go, boy, I wonder if Jim would call this overstuffed. There is a bit of the romantic B plot or C plot, where it's like, well, that's an interesting turn. I get we're going to have this. But then I looked at it. It was funny. Like, there's this moment, and folks, we're in the spoiler zone now. There's a moment where because of a terrible error in judgment on the boy's part, he tells a buddy, who of course tells everybody about an embarrassing anecdote with her family. She finally says, okay, you can make it up to me by basically a dare down by the quarry. You know, it looked like a quarry lake. And I'm like, wait, the shy one is now doing daredevil stuff? Of course, later on, I thought to myself, well, maybe we could say she does get on a fishing vessel, one of the most dangerous activities, one of the most dangerous jobs out there, and she gets on that 3 a.m. before school every day. Perhaps I shouldn't be questioning her courage. Yeah. You know? But I still felt, I think that still goes to something. That was one point where I got over it, but I did feel it's like, what? The other thing I wanted to comment on was, and it's going back to the big dialogue, this is a much gentler movie. It does have I'd call them 3 acts, but it isn't like a big hook. Yes, she joins choir. That's probably the big move that kind of triggers it all, because all of a sudden she does have a voice. It's not just a thing she did to the radio. And it gets her closer to the boy, so that gets that going. And it applies pressure back home, because all of a sudden she's got something competing for her interest. She might leave the family in the time of need. But it's not like it's not like Faye Dunaway walking in saying, sir, Jake, why did you, that woman, I am his husband or her husband, and now he's dead because of you or what? Do you know that China? Yeah. I can barely remember it, but it's such a big act hook in Chinatown. Jake Gittes thinks he's been hired by the wife of this character, finds him with a woman who isn't, comes back. It's all a big misunderstanding. Well, not more than a big misunderstanding. It's Chinatown. But yeah, that's a huge act hook when Faye Dunaway walks in and says, I'm his wife. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, I've been played all along. And I thought I solved the mystery. And no, I'm just in a bigger mystery. That's a big barbecue hook into the second act. Mm-hmm. This doesn't have that. Even the third act is not your obvious. They don't do that Hollywood thing. Like, it's not the, we'll rush. Even though there is a rush to the what's the word I'm looking for? To the audition. Oh, yeah. That actually isn't the key. Like, the key moment was a previous performance. It's they don't have the big show-stopping everybody's crying in that. No, it's almost like they could have at every stage to kind of pull it down. And I'm wondering if that's kind of that what they're making here is a stew, not a steak. It isn't, and this is when I put on the fire, and this is how much salt, and it's only on this time, and then I flip it over to the other side, and it's big and grand and scenery chewing, and I know. What do you? I'm dumping a whole bunch of stuff on you there, Jim. But what do you think?
Okay, well, first, the overstuffed thing. I didn't think the romance was excessive. We don't even get the sense that these kids are destined to be with each other. I think it was something.
Which is another great thing about
yeah,
it.
it got her out of her shell. It's like, I'll come to visit you on weekends or whatever. Because he screws up, and we're told he screws up his audition and doesn't.
He tells us.
Yeah, he tells us.
He says he choked.
Yeah, they don't show it on the screen, however. But and that was important because they're not both going in. Like at no point was this, they had none of those sort of quick cut, those edit, those high angle shots or anything like that. It was fairly straightforward in the way they depicted the music. And even the one school concert where she sang, and there were people that were sort of weeping, but it's funny, my kids years ago used to watch all these Disney shows, and virtually all of them, the main characters were performers of some kind, and they always had to put on these shows that were like, thousands of people cheering at the end. To a show almost, and it was just like, why does everyone have to be a performer in this world? That's not overdone. I mean, there's that quiet little sort of school show, and they're just like, well, and until they look around and they are seeing how the people react.
Oh, they're talking about dinner.
Yeah. Spaghetti. What he does, spaghetti, I think, is the sign.
Yeah.
But so overstuff. I don't think it's overstuffed with the romance.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the other parts are overbaked at all. It's just like the procedure that everyone else goes to get into to get into the Berklee School of Music. I thought that was really well handled. And again, at no time are we told she's the voice of a generation. Good kid, nice voice, some talent. She's got to work at it, and that's a nice touch.
Yeah, and that we see it's another great story touch that we'll get into the theme of it, but how she, at the end, she's singing and signing, because we see a lot of signing, then we see some singing, and then we see the singing through the parents, without any, they don't have any context. So they're just kind of stuck. And we are kind of going, oh, well, yeah, this would suck. I could see how someone might go, this bites. Or, well, might as well talk about dinner because I can't hear shit. Then to finish it off in a much more subtle way with that Joni Mitchell tune where she's signing it, and we as hearing people are getting feeling from that, which I thought was just a really cool, subtle little thing.
And this is cool, and I suspect you might have picked up on that. What song is she singing?
What was it? Both Sides.
Both Sides Now.
Yeah.
And her world is made up of hearing and non-hearing people.
Yeah. Oh, and just the way she's...
But it's not until she combines the two that she starts to... Remember, they have to start over because the music teacher covers for her.
Yeah, because she was doing the breathy, pretty thing.
Yeah. So she brings both of her worlds together while singing Both Sides Now, a little on the nose.
Yeah.
And it's then that she sort of delivers the
I never caught that. I never caught quite that subtlety. I got some of the lyrics, but I didn't really quite get that hit like you did, Jim. I'm so glad you pulled it out, eh?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Maybe a little on the nose, but yeah, it was quite. It didn't like.
Yeah.
It's just like.
But I do like that the way they resolved it in the story, and it's some gentle steps from the climax, which is her parents actually seeing her sing. Mm-hmm. Her making that terrible tough choice, but like an adult to, be there for the family, and them to make that later decision in the third act. What did you think? What did you think of that whole, like the main B plot?
Oh,
the family,
the fishing,
the building the co-op, that kind of how they are responding to their situation?
Well, I think it was important because they, like her, throughout the movie, they sort of consider themselves, even though they're part of the community, they consider themselves outsiders. And so this is, almost in concert, music word, almost in concert with her. They're all, sorry, they're both, like both her and her dad are coming out of their shell sort of at the same time. And dad realizes that he's part of, even though he's maybe seen as a, a freak or something because he can't hear. I can't use.
Well, and some of it's their own perceptions.
Exactly.
Right? Their own, we're seen as freaks.
So he, almost along with her, as she's sort of becoming more confident about her place in the world, he sort of is as well, or at least he's been given the push by their situation, and he sort of stands up in that meeting and he starts to talk a little bit, which is something that he wouldn't necessarily have done before. So I thought that was well handled. It almost felt like a 70s movie B plot to me, and like an indie movie B plot too. I thought it was well handled. I didn't not believe any of it, and it gave them gave them something to do. I was going to say agency. I'm not sure that's the right word there, but it gave them something to do. They were just like the dad. He's
and it filled the world.
Yes.
We get more of this idea of the world she lives in. And the community that they're all in. Yeah, I agree with you. Anything else you wanted to add as far as story goes?
Yeah.
Or actually, I think I basically just rambled on about story.
Well, there's one aspect that I thought that I didn't love, and it's that old chestnut of that I got tired of watching the Flintstones when I was a kid. It's that, oh no, Fred's got his anniversary dinner, and he's got a bowl with the elks or the bison. What was his?
I think it was the buffalo, the heart of the buffalo, or something.
So he's got to be two places at once, and so he comes in for dinner, and he has dinner with Wilma, and then he goes back out to bowl his frames, whatever. And that
the lodge,
yeah. I don't love that, and they do that a little bit in this, where she has to go for her audition at the same time. Marlee Matlin doesn't bother telling her they've got a TV crew that she's got to interpret.
Wasn't the audition? It was just the last. It was that practice that was about to break teacher's back.
Yeah, and so, that's right. Yeah. So that having to be
Loyal Order of the Water Buffalo.
Water Buffalo. That's it. Thank you.
That's what's important right here.
Yeah.
Your mid spiel, like.
Well, it's
okay. Anyway.
That would bug me. I would wake up at 3 a.m. going Water Buffalo, but that chestnut, that sort of having to be two places at once, kind of a tired thing, but relatively, compared with the rest of it, it's a minor sin. I don't love it myself. It's sort of one of those tiring obstacle kind of things.
Well, and also teachers are uniformly aware of this. If he knew that she was the kid of the deaf family, he's going to know their economic situation. He's going to know, if we're going to do this, but better make sure that she is, that there is the time budgeted. There's going to be some allowance for that. At the same time, I did like they never once went to that tired, speaking of tired old trope, it's like, you're ashamed of us.
Oh, yeah.
When the mother did I wouldn't be surprised if you and your wife have done this with your own kids. It's like, really, singing. So if I was blind, you'd get into painting, like that. The kid, it's not about us, but I could see a mother saying, oh, for fuck's sakes, really? Oh, you're a choir now. Sure. Any other way you want to piss me off, child? Yeah. What am I, new? I loved that. I loved that. Like, it surprised me. And I'm like, I see a parent thinking that.
Yeah.
You know, like, because they're forever examining their children's motives, you know, and that doesn't mean that you're always right or anything, but I thought that was so real and so not obvious. Not once did the kid ever that not once did the parent, you're just ashamed of us. What was another one I really enjoyed that they didn't, you know, that they did it differently. She comes home, everything's blown up because the government observer, like in typical Karen fashion, I'm going to call the police and say this is terribly dangerous. She comes home, it's all blown up, like he's got his license suspended to fish, the father and everything. And the kid at no time, all right, I just can't, my dreams are over.
Yeah.
I'll never let this happen.
True.
And you don't, nope. She's like, don't put this on me. This is not my fault.
Yeah.
This is not and I do love these great moments of signing where they're physically embodying that. Don't put it on me. You know, you can see the meaning. You don't necessarily need the mouth moving and the volume to go, oh yeah, no, and I thought that was so good. So good that she was pushing back. That's so real and honest. And they didn't go to that more melodramatic trope. You know, where this is a story of her looking back on 40 years of wasted life, and she just finally joins an old folks choir and becomes a soloist.
Yeah.
You know, loved that. Loved that choice. Great story choice.
Yeah, yeah. And also, too, she's got a hearkening back a little bit to Kraft. She's not the other three members of her family in the cast, they're deaf American, from the deaf community. She's not, so she had to learn all that sign language as well. By the way, Welsh or English actress, as is Miles. He's English as well. That her love interest,
the boyfriend.
The boyfriend is English as well.
Or no, really?
Sorry, Irish. Yeah,
Irish.
Yeah, so
Irish and Welsh.
I could not tell. You know,
no,
they came across as American kids, but
yeah.
No, having said that about the two things at once,
clean, healthy complexion from European living.
There you go. Being in two places once, that did lead to a nice scene when she did go to see the music Mr. V the next day, and they had a talk. And the only way, I think she did this a couple times in the movie only. But it's where he said, how does singing make you feel? And she signed it to him, not in a pretentious way, but you got the impression it was the only way that she could convey it better in signing than she could in English. And that was I think one of the three scenes I was talking about before that were those nice lengthy scenes that sort of gave the characters some breath, some real body and breath. Yeah.
Airy. Some air. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, It had a number of those, just really nice little sweetheart moments.
Yeah.
I also loved I loved the story choice of her girlfriend. Listen, I might be hung up about sex, but that doesn't mean everyone has to be. This has got to be one of the most sex positive in your face films, but that her friend is, you know, I was like, I love that. I love that is, and it makes her, it's part of what makes her feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
you know, that her friends effing every boy she takes a liking to.
Including her brother.
Yeah. And that she, the vernacular would be cock blocks her.
Yeah.
And one of those few times it's, oh, shitty move on your buddy, but same time it is your brother. Do you really want you want to facilitate that? Probably not.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed those choices because it just made these characters she could have just otherwise been a generic friend.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm on your side. No, the friend has a whole life that we only at points only see little points of.
Yeah.
You know, and we're like, nope, but we know who she is. And oh, isn't that sweet? She has grown like Abed having an adventure in the background.
Yes. Yeah.
She's at her own. Like it's one of those things where the friend could have. Boy, it'd be interesting to see her movie of her. Because a part of me was like, oh well, in part 2, she would be the one who's now the helping her and her brother. She's the one who's learned ASL and is now part of that family business because
Yeah.
the talented one went off to school. Off to the big city with all the assholes. The assholes. Love the fact that I remember the swears.
Yeah. You learn so much from this movie. Another nice little line was when Miles was talking about her family, Ruby's family, and she said, and he actually sort of defends her parents for having sex in the next room from them. And he says, well, why would I hate on your family? Your mom and dad are madly in love. They can barely keep their hands off each other. Yeah. And instead of that, him going, oh, gross, he sees that as a positive thing because he doesn't come from he comes from, we're led to understand, a colder, more distant household. I thought that was kind of
I think where his parents hate each other. I think that was one of the things he said. Yeah. No, it's a sweetheart. Well, let's talk about the meaning. Oh, quick review. We don't want that. There's a number of themes here, but if you were to say, what do you think the big theme is? Like the main one, the key? Because there's a lot going on here.
There is, yeah. I think there's a balance. It's sort of a lot of the movie has to do with the balance between doing things out of duty and doing things for yourself. And in this case, she's trying to serve two masters a little bit. Like she's trying to do her own thing and contribute to the family. I mean, she's the liaison between her family and the community. So I think part of it is that you have to ultimately choose one or the other. In this case, she does, after a drawn out process, she chooses school. But I think there's that the choice between being yourself and doing duty is a hard one. I think there's something there. I don't know if I'm articulating it quite as precise as I want to, but I think it does have to do with duty. Duty versus self, perhaps. There is a lot in it too. There's the aspects of them coming out to the community and in sort of embracing.
Excuse me.
Yeah, just sort of. Yeah, I'd say it had to do with duty, the limits of duty, perhaps. What were you thinking in this along these lines?
I think that's an interesting. Yeah, there is that idea of obligation, obligation to the family, especially when you have such a role in it. Although it is interesting, even the parents later, they're arguing, and it's the dad who says, when they're arguing, like the mother, Marlee Matlin, the mother, the woman has a name. Let me grab
Mrs.
it.
Rossi.
Mrs. Rossi.
Jackie.
Yeah. Jackie and Frank, the dad, they're in bed and they're arguing, right? This is all after the big kerfuffle where the daughter's like, listen, don't lay this on me. Or maybe it was about school. I don't know. One of those arguments. Oh, it was the argument before the big day of the cops magically showing up to say, oh, this is dangerous. Suddenly, the Coast Guard, the American, is interested in how dangerous fishing is.
Yes, yeah.
That said, Frank is, you know what? She's not her baby anymore. And she's like, she's my baby because she's, her mom. And she's like, and this is a moment. Yeah. And I thought it was such a great moment where she's like, he is acknowledging the very real fact she's never been a baby. We have, because of their circumstances, it's almost medieval, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but no, kids, you're on the boat with us because we've got to make a living. And There's a great anecdote where the soon-to-be boyfriend's talking about how baller he thought it was when he saw her as a little kid, and he was a little kid, and she was passing on the order and ordering a couple of beer, which is a great little moment.
Yeah.
But it also it's that moment that sets up that makes Frank's comment she was never a baby.
That was a great line.
It was a great line, but I don't think it would have the impact without the anecdote from a few scenes before, or a number of scenes before, where the guy's saying, "Oh, I remember you doing that. Thought it was so baller." There's these moments where you go, "Yeah, she has always been leaned on." So I think instead of so much because they usually like to kind of describe it that way, is duty, but maybe it's we also have an obligation to our daughter to see what she can do. You love fishing. Like, no one's saying he's obligated just because it's the only thing I know how to do. It's the thing that allows him to be who he is. That's what it is for him. Even Marlee Matlin kind of steps out of her like she identifies herself as this culturally deaf person, but if the daughter says, yeah, those are people you hang out together once a month, and I'm assuming some sort of catch-up meeting, I think it's very much about changing roles, and also about the parents' duty to her. Mm-hmm. The parents, it's like, okay, we've leaned on her long enough. Now we need to support her in what she wants to do. We can figure the rest out. We don't need to keep exploiting child labor. If we're going to unionize, that's what a producer co-op is in many respects. If we're going to do that, we can figure out the rest. We have a son who wants to be there, who likes to be there, and who's willing to pick up that slack. Yeah. So I think I think you're right, but it's interdependent duty. What is the duty of these folks as parents to her? Especially she's discovered this thing that Frank has always had.
Yeah.
Beyond sex.
Yeah.
Which apparently another passion of him and Jackie's.
Yes, yeah. And that thing about them being noisy, just around the house, that sort of brings that sex scene, into, like, they don't know how much noise they're making, right? So,
and it's the thing she's just had to put the headphones on, sing along with other music. Yeah, like she's had. It was interesting, in the big conflict scene, she's talking about how exhausting it is to be an interpreter for them, because that's all she's done. Yeah. But it also must have been exhausting just to hear it all, which is really kind of a cool kind of double thing going on in this movie. That idea that a deaf home, there is a lot you hear, and I think that is just so cool that they're able to kind of work. Oh, now I'm just doing that whole thing. Look, I have a ball. There's other. It'll be my hand gesture. It'll be my hand gesture for the next 6 weeks.
Using our hand, exactly. Yeah. Make that clear. We're not signing or fake signing. Yeah. Although whenever I see something like this, I always think, "Oh man, it'd be cool to be able to sign." But anyway.
Well, it is. It's the, but like you said, the sounds and everything. I think also. So yeah, I'm with you on duty, but I think it's that interdependent, interlinked duty to each other.
Yeah.
And at what point do you relieve? Do you say, "Hey, you've stood watch long enough. It is a boat. You've stood watch long enough. It is now time for us to say, hey, thank you very much for your service. Find that thing of yours, and we'll figure out another way that you can be part of the family, that the family can reinvent itself."
Yeah.
As we see with her in kind of training mode as dad is teaching just some schmo while the son is in the truck because he wants to go out and interact with the world. Because he's another one who's trapped in this weird dynamic the parents built, or these obligations the parent built. Or roles. That's it, roles. She does this, you do this. This is the way it is,
Yeah.
I also love, and I do think it's maybe it's the French. It is a French film. Sure, it's made in North America. The Sian, I cannot. Oh, I haven't. I was lazy. I didn't figure out the pronunciation in time. But the director, the woman who directed and wrote it's a French produced. Though all the producers are French. It's Path Films and Vendome Pictures. It's a French movie.
Yeah.
We're seeing an English version of a French movie. And so of course there's actual like sex and vulgar and real, without in any way being pornographic. Certainly can't. Not erotic either. Real. Too in a way dirty to be erotic.
Scratching an itch.
Yeah, maybe. I'm having a tough time quite nailing on that. But I think there's something, maybe it's unintended, but so I think part of the meaning of the film, even though it may have been unintended, although it's like, boy, that's a few sex scenes that did the girlfriend have to be that big a fan of sex? No, that's a choice.
That's true. Yeah. Good connection. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was one, and then of course, the like to the heart of how I defined a year ago, where I was like, okay, what am I talking about for us about class consciousness? And this hits it. A real working class family. And it goes even further, like obviously the filmmakers are aware of how they're being exploited, but that it allows these people, without sounding like they went to some Marxist retreat, to understand, no, I know who the enemy is. It's that weasel middleman, and it's those fuckers from the feds who are squeezing us. And we can, to analyze and identify how they can fix their situation. We didn't hear once some paean to American independence. Built this, built the boat with their spare hands. Yeah. They understand. It's like, no, we're fishermen. They may own their own boat, but that's like an electrician owning his own hand tools. They own the very basics to do their job. They are on contract, and so for them, that their solution, and this goes to what you were saying, Jim, about them going beyond the idea of their community and kind of going, but all us fishing families are in the same bind, and we need to work together to get us out of this bind, or at least one part of this bind we're in. I thought was like, again, I don't think we've seen that in any of the films we've looked at. And although I was hopeful, and I was like, well, at least it'll be somewhat real. I never thought it'd be this on point.
Yeah.
Well, it never once feeling like, and now here's the Comrade Marx rallying the troops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never
once,
And no reaction against that either. I mean, it's just sort of presented as an alternative, right?
Yeah, and they're just doing their thing. Like, and it's still about her and her journey to become a world-class singer or whatever the hell, or maybe just a teacher like Villalobos,
Mr. V.
Mr. V.
Yeah.
I thought that was part of its meaning, and honest and real, and followed through on it behind the scenes. It was a fucking union-made film.
Yeah.
And it was. It's like, oh, there's the Teamsters. Like it's 5 freaking union logos. Now, that doesn't mean you only see one union logo. The other players are there. Although sometimes the Teamsters are doing the driving. Sometimes it's IA. But, the SAG-AFTRA. But there was, what else was in there? Jeez, it was just like it was so many, I can't remember them all.
No. And I actually did think of Nomadland when I had the credits on till the end.
Yeah.
And just the seals went by, and I thought, oh, okay. See, it can be done.
Yes. And that's exactly it. I will be able to refer to both of these films like, they're 2 worlds. One side's the good side.
Yes.
That they're able to analyze it while at the same time it doesn't feel like some Marxist screed. You don't feel preached at or anything. It's not, and this is not a knock on the film Norma Ray, but it isn't the workers' struggle. That's not what this movie's about. Yeah, it was able to hit all those. Jim, what did you think? I even think there was an honest, a lovely treatment of young love as well. Notwithstanding the weird, hey, let's jump off. This is how you can make it up to me. We'll go. They don't go skinny dipping.
No.
But at the end where he's like, yeah, I choked. And there isn't a weird kind of like sometimes to really press down on the emotion, it becomes I can't talk to you right now. And then, so she's sort of on her own. He's like, I choked. He's not, and later he's not holding it against her. There isn't,
No.
They're still dating. And like you say, yeah, they're probably, it was funny. She's like, will you come visit? And of course he's going to go visit her. In my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe it won't be a cellist wearing a fedora, but there will be another guy because that's life. Yeah. But you don't feel your nose is being rubbed in it. You also don't feel this like some big breakup. Yeah, they don't do any bullshit breakup scene or, none of that. It's just really soft and sweet, understated, and realistic.
Yeah, they don't gravitate to melodrama. They don't overplay their hand at any point.
No.
Or by they, I mean the makers of the movie. It's low key. Most of the things are handled in a fairly low key way. Within reason. It's still a movie, right? It's still a movie that's trying to elicit.
I still cried.
Oh yeah.
It hits you here.
Oh yeah.
know.
And you have little, it's got a nice father-daughter relationship. That when he's sort of feeling your throat to hear her sing because he's,
and how she sings like more from the belly, the deeper.
Yeah.
As she digs deeper, more meaning.
Yeah, yeah. So those are all, they're still able to elicit emotion out of it without overmining or hitting the typical points, or doing that. Nobody's being rained on and having out in the rain and they're all having an argument, or this is it, I can never go on, or nothing.
You have to tell your parents this.
The performance scenes aren't overdone. The crisis scenes aren't overdone. At one point, I actually wrote fairly early in the movie, this is my third note, somebody is going to die. I thought this would be like ordinary people. There'd be some overturned boat, and they're hanging onto the tub in a storm. As George Clooney and
maybe they jumped off the thing. Isn't this where youth break their neck?
You might say this is a perfect storm as George Clooney and his crew go sailing by. But nothing. I think it's basically the same place. Not making fun, but anyway, at no point do you do that, and you don't have any deaths at sea. I mean, that's Rowdy Man with Gordon Vincent 101, where you have you're working in a dangerous place like a mill, and your buddy's going to die. And that's
Well,
part of it. And nobody
that
dies.
would have been when she came home from the quarry with it, because you weren't there. We had to do it with two, and somebody was not some bureaucrat dimed them out to the fuzz, and they've got fines.
And I was happy. I was so happy to see that nobody had died. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, and even in that, again, back to its realism and its working class perspective. By the time you get to the fine portion, that license is suspended, it's $1,000 fine plus $1,500. Yes, they're all great actors. They're all reacting appropriately, especially like even there's that little bit of a delay, kind of like an audio delay, where it's like, oh, that's shitty, while she's interpreting. They're also, you do not need to have it explained to us that, it's like, that's a lot of money to these people. That's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
They are not like that. That could set them behind a year, and with the license suspended. And the fact of it, the moment where she has to say, the only way we're going to pay this is what do we need to do so he can get his license back? Just cut to the chase, because there's this whole impersonal system that doesn't care. And if they didn't ask, they wouldn't tell them. It's, well, here's the fine, and this is the minimum, and you're the bad person. It is a great real moment where we're put in the right, as an audience, we're thematically, we're put in the right place to go, wow, this is bad. This is the lecture, everything is all just shitty. And you get the idea that all these people are not that far from, economic ruin, while at the same time, they don't live in squalor, which is another thing I detest. Yes, they're living at a bit of maybe not a shanty, but it wasn't, it's like a house in rural Manitoba.
Yeah.
It's lived in, kind of, that's thank God the walls are leaning inward. The roof is keeping them apart, But it's a well-kept house. It's a clean house. It's a organized house.
And a really nice plan to it. If it's got a little railing up top and everything else. Yeah, I thought it was like, oh, that's kind of nice.
But I didn't think it was Friends. You know what I mean? Like,
the unrealistic.
I didn't feel, that unrealistic. I could see this house, in Winnipeg, in a city, the poorer you are, the smaller it is. Out in the sticks, you got more space, but it can be ramshackle. And there's a bit of ramshackleness, but it's still clean. It's not, no, I loved it. Everything. Just bang on. Maybe it's time, Jim, to, beg our couple of, I think we may still have a few viewers.
Well, they've been in and out today, and we're missing a couple regulars.
Yeah. But
who are thoughtlessly on vacation. But,
what's with that? Only came in a couple of our live streams while they're on vacation. Why not all?
Yes.
But I think it is that time, folks, to once again, beg you for a like. If you haven't already, of course, please subscribe. And last but certainly not least, don't forget to ring that bell. Jim, it is so nice to have that bell back.
Yeah. Silent.
I mean, you did a great job making do while you're out in the left coast, out in Lotus Land. But it's great to have you back.
Yeah.
Why don't you, Jim, give you the screen, and why don't you tell us what we're going to be watching next week on, I think it's a Does It Hold Up next week, isn't it?
You bet. Yeah, end of the month. So we're taking a look at one that I haven't seen in a long time. So it was a good suggestion on Rob's part. Caddyshack. I think our second Chevy Chase movie in the Does It Hold Up series. But yeah, lots going on there. I think Chevy Chase and Bill Murray famously had a fist fight at one point on the SNL set. So that's interesting. They're side by side in that movie poster. But yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And a 70s and even into the early 80s. Ted Knight, big comedy guy. And then this kind of made Rodney Dangerfield from a comic to a comedy star.
Yeah.
You know, like brought him to a larger audience, as opposed to that weird cult underground thing on the Tonight Show with that Carson guy.
Yeah. And if you listen to, I can't remember, I somehow heard a bunch of stories about him lately, just on independent podcasts. I think Mark Maron was maybe talking about him, and apparently a super nice guy, would take people under his wing, and apparently a pretty big pothead too, which you wouldn't normally.
Who? Rodney or
Rodney?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah. I just wanted to bring this up here really quickly. I was after I'd seen CODA last night. I went on Twitter just to get a sort of a sense of if people were watching it and that kind of thing. And our buddy, well, not really our buddy, but Mark Harris, who wrote the book on the 5 Best Picture nominees, he had an interesting tweet. I thought this was germane, and he says, "I caught up with CODA on Apple Plus, and man, it checks off every Sundance compulsory with the laser-focused precision of a Russian skater. But I can't hold that against it because it's also touching and beautifully acted and choked me up. Recommend." and he follows up. He says, "Also, I assume that the cajillion bucks Apple paid to acquire CODA includes TV series rights, and that takes nothing away from the film to say that the world it creates could possibly serve as the basis for a very strong hour-long drama." Which I think you sort of referred to, but
it's surprising because I was like, "Oh, maybe I will get to see the girlfriend and the brother."
Yeah.
You know, like see that develop.
Yeah.
You know, and even to see Marlee Matlin, her relationship with those women that she's working with, that she's recruited and she's finally decided to reach out to, how that could, it could be that. Heck, it could be a Ted Lasso-esque sitcom, and I'd be down with that.
Oh, yeah.
Really down with that.
Yeah.
Gotta love me some Ted Lasso.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, then, Jim, let's take an easy one first. Director, Ms. Heder. Sean or Sian. Pass.
Yeah. Fail. Pass, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, ditto.
Nice work.
So gets the Jim pass.
Yeah, Jim pass. There we go. And she's directed another movie called Tallulah, which I think is on Netflix. And, you know, this is one of those ones that are like, okay, maybe I'll check out what else she's done. You know, it was, I think that's strong. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, ditto. She is, her spouse, David Newsom. Just looking this up on IMDb. He's an actor, producer, fine art photographer. And yeah, he's kind of an art guy. One of those
art guys.
One of those arty guys, but you artiste. But it again, it's like, artful, but totally accessible.
Oh yeah.
This movie, yeah. At no time do you feel like you're in a hack's hands.
Yeah, no.
You know, the cinematography. Well, okay. First of all, yeah, pass for me too. A plus. Give all of the passes. Here's a gym pass. Here's another one for next year.
Yeah.
Maybe not a lifetime gym pass yet, but this is a great start. You know what, Jim? I wonder, and I don't want to. It was interesting. Something one of our colleagues, one of our fellow YouTube film beat types, we had been going back and forth on Twitter about Annihilation, and which he thought was a great film. Mm-hmm. But as far as what was better on a The Lighthouse. Thought that was better, and just there's your masterpiece, whereas Annihilation is, well, it's a great film, but, and that really got me started to think about how I could apply my whole, there's barbecue, and then there's stew, or cheese making, or, any of these things which they're a little subtler, and that's where I started to get into this idea of, a performance calibrated to the film. And I wonder if what we're seeing here, and I don't want to say I think more women filmmakers make movies like this, but why that is, I'm not sure that is actually, I think it, but I don't know it for sure. And even then the speculation on why, that just more trouble, and probably more trouble than it's worth. But there's something about a film like this, which its strength is it chooses to be a stew, a flavorful stew, but something that you're not even really realizing how good the meal is until the end of it. Like as you get taken on a flavor journey. I know that's a little much, but
well,
whereas you got having a barbecue and you got, or I guess a cookout, grilling would be the American, for the Americans in our audience, where you got steak and then you got a bunch of other stuff, but it's really about the steak.
Yeah.
And it's super got heat, and you've got flames and very little else going on, and there's big forks, and it's just really dramatic. And I know I talked about it earlier, but it's big and it's loud and it's obvious. And I think this film is made by someone who's really kind of going, no, I got the ingredients of some great stew here, and I'm going to make a stew, and it's going to bubble in a pot, and you are going to enjoy something that has many flavors in it. There are no several flavors in a steak. A steak is a steak. A good steak is great. I am not knocking a good steak, but I'm not looking for subtleties in steak because there aren't any there. Yeah. It does one thing very well. And I think it is unfair. I would say a movie like The Lighthouse is a big steak. It's a big, maybe a flavorful steak, but still a big steak. It's one big, loud, scenery chewing steak.
Black and white steak.
Yeah, black and white 4x, square. What it was, fucking Instagram. But it's really the filmmaking, just like when you're barbecuing a steak, when you're grilling a steak at a cookout for our American viewers, it's all about the cook, really. Yeah. As long as they get the right ingredient, the right actor, it's about the cook. Look what I've done here, and look what I did here, and look at me and my ridiculous apron and my ridiculous tools. Whereas something like this, something like Annihilation, both those filmmakers are bringing out something in a cast iron pot and there's some rice and there's this and there's that, and it's popped open. You get a waft of these flavors and you're still trying to figure out half of them, and then it's on your plate and you're enjoying it, and that meal can spread out a bit and you got some time to enjoy that meal.
Yeah.
And I think both have their place, but I think it's unfair, and I think it's unfair that these films are going to get judged as, oh, it's just a stew made by some woman in a kitchen. I've had stew before. So where's my steak? And it's like, no, this is a beautiful, well done meal that deserves your attention, because it just keeps rewarding you.
Well, there's also theories out there that compare, and I'm going to get a little sort of cruder than steak and stew here, and this is a theory that I've heard, but that the things that men create, how can I put this? The things that males create take on the characteristics of a male orgasm, whereas the things that women create take on the aspects of a woman's orgasm. In that, for male, there's one big literal climax, right? It all leads to this big final sort of act.
Sawn into that steak, bah, rah, rah.
Whereas the woman's is more of a sort of a slower rise or what have you. I'm not articulating myself at all. I haven't read up on this. I did not prepare, but that I've heard that a number of times. Whether or not I agree with it, I haven't really done any deep reading. I just know that from hearing it at cocktail parties and things like that. But that's sort of another aspect, like
I think it's talking about something
Men drive cars like way. This. Women drive cars like this.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm also, because Annihilation, it was that Wygand guy, wasn't it? Wygand? What the hell?
Oh yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's an Annihilation film, just to say, and it was based on a book written by a man, the Alex Garland. He was the same guy who did, what the heck did he do? 28 Days Later,
Ex Machina?
Sunshine.
Did he do that one?
He wrote the screenplays for 28 Days Later, Sunshine, Never Let Me Go, and Dread, which is another awesome movie, because sometimes you want a steak. Yeah. Dread's a steak, but sometimes you want a steak. But his directorial debut was Ex Machina. And that's what I'm thinking of. Another film that isn't a steak. It's got more flavors in there. It takes a while to. So that's why I'm like I kind of get the
uplifting Alex Garland. Chuckle Fest, Never Let Me Go. Crank.
The feel-good movie of the year. Another Christmas classic from Alex Garland.
About sad robots or clones or whatever. Yeah. Sign me up.
But yeah, Annihilate, the book was written by Jeff Vandermeer. So yeah, I kind of get why at times you're led to gendered analogies. But I think there is something here that, be interesting on the count. I don't know. Like there's something going on here, and maybe it's getting rid of the gender analogies so that you can look at it better. And that's why I'm getting into more of my steak and stew kind of thing. Although that still allows for a gendered analysis, because what do guys do? Steak. It's one part of cooking where men take over. Yeah. But I think part of that is because they get to show off. I think there are a lot of films where the director is just fucking showing off. Whereas here, we only see the director in just how flavorful this fucking meal is. Jeez, I'm getting all misty with my own bullshit. Well. What else? Anything you want to add? I kind of dumped my theory of film Oh my,
No,
yeah.
that's good.
What are some of your final thoughts, Jim?
There's two lines I wrote down that I'm not sure at what point. Oh yeah, Mr. V says to the kids when they are singing, "I am not angry at this," which is I thought was funny. And at some point they refer to somebody as "hearing bitches," which is
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Those are the two notes that I didn't expound upon that I had written down. But yeah, no, yeah, great for a watch. I'm hoping to see more things from these folks. Um, and all the parties involved. I thought the people that played the family.
Mhm.
As we said, this is kind of exciting because Marlee Matlin, I think, is the only big name in it. But Emilia Jones, that's her name. Is it Emilia or
Yeah,
Emily?
yeah. I mean, I'm
Emilia
looking
Jones.
at it now.
That she's obviously be interesting to watch her, and the one who plays her brother, and the one who plays Dad, Frank. He's been involved with a lot of projects. He was, if you remember, Sue Thomas FBI was a Canadian show about a deaf FBI analyst, and he had a role on that. And he's been doing a lot of sort of things with it, deaf storylines, deaf
Hmm.
community storylines. Um, so yeah, it's good for. He's even directed before too, so it's nice to see people getting a nice, nice chunky role to sort of to go over, and good for them. It's
Yeah,
fun to see that come together.
yeah. No, couldn't agree more, Jim.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
yeah. What a great fucking movie.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
oh, look at this. And at the end,
I wonder. Hey,
DMG, our our semi-regular co-host.
good night, Winnipeg. It's just he's coming in the front door. Everyone's leaving by the back.
Yeah, yeah. It's like
Sorry,
putting
DMG.
on our coats. It's like, oh hey. I guess as hosts, we're actually cleaning up all the hors d'oeuvres. Oh, welcome, DMG. I do want to ask you: have you seen CODA yet?
Thank you for welcoming me, but you can obviously tell that I'm back in Winnipeg.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
it is kind of nice to see your background, though, Jim.
yeah,
After a while, well, doing it for well over a year, that
yeah,
has been the background for quite some time.
it is.
You just kind of you get used to it.
Mhm.
Yeah, DMG, I would love to know if you've seen it and give us your worth your time or not. Be interested in your quick thoughts as we actually wrap this show up, dude. Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
two things
After oh
actually.
Eddie, I think it's much like I was saying how nice a film. It was a nice movie. And Free Guy, apparently DMG is putting it in the after school special bin. I think both you and I firmly disagree with that, but DMG has definitely got a different take. Looking forward, Brian, to your review. Love to hear your full take on it.
Yeah, I got two
Yeah.
final thoughts here. One, I just wanted to read I kind of dig a cool title. CODA, in addition to being the acronym for Child of Deaf Adults, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is also obviously a musical term. The concluding passage of a piece or movement, typically forming an addition to the basic structure. So that's
Little
pretty
double
cool.
meaning.
I like that. And also, if a movie is on Apple Plus, can it be a date movie? It's more of a poser. What we in the
That's an
business call
interesting
a
question.
poser. The date would
A
have to be at
poser.
home. Does that count? Anyway.
Yeah, I think so. And because it's a coming of age movie, Jim, I think it's perfect as a home thing for people. They've been through high school. They have some distance on their teen years, whether or not they're they got kids or anything. I think the older it is, the more you could mine some emotion from the nostalgia. That said, I I think it'd be a great date movie. Somebody cooking for someone else. Now I'm thinking about a
no,
stew.
you're back on food.
No, back on food. I think food is a great analogy for our film. But I think it could be a great date movie, a great in the home date movie. Yeah, because we're probably talking about older people. It's not a couple of 20-year-olds that are watching this. Or if they are, I think it would be really hard for a 20-year-old to get the full effect. Whereas you're in your 40s, all of a sudden it's like you have some distance on what she's going through.
Yeah.
And so there is a poignancy, while at the same time some humor. Like the mother, it's like, so if you're blind, you'd start painting. So if I was blind, would you paint? I just thought that was such a great, you can see the humor in it where you can see the daughter being upset by it. I loved those moments. Yeah. Anyway, DMG has a comment. By the way, did they ever say whether this was supposed to be north or south? And why leave out the da part of Dakota? That I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes.
But it's CODA. That's his that's his riff. Alrighty, folks. I think that about wraps it up for us, eh, Jim?
I think so, yeah.
You wanna say you know what? Let's say goodbye to everyone together. We've got, of course, DMG. Thanks for coming in at the end here, and appreciate your opinion and looking forward to your review. And anyone who's watching at this point, go check out Brian's Dragon Movie Guy. Search it on. You'll find him linked on a number of our videos, including last week's. On Free Guy, as he pitched in as a co-host while Jim was in travel mode. Who else do we got here?
Thank you, Ken.
We've got Curtis Judd.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Shashank, Jelly Duck, Ahmed. Great
Vlad.
To see him here. And of course, Vlad, Walt from also from BC. Missing Jim already. All of a sudden, he's back on the show because this is the way he's going to see him once a week, which is awesome. Jim, I want to, on behalf of the audience, welcome you back.
Oh, thank you very much.
You know what? We did, even the shows where you were, there's something different about you being here in Winnipeg with us all. So that's awesome, and really glad you made it back.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. With that out of the way, folks, I'm going to send Jim to the green room, and I thought I was going to turn up the tunes. There we go. Turn up the tunes. We'll move the chat off. Remind you all, folks, that we will be, again, next week, next Sunday, 9:30 Central Daylight Time, UTC -5. We will be finding out, does Caddyshack hold up? Now, with that out of the way, I want to just say thanks to everyone again for making it, and I think it's time to bid you all adieu. Let's turn down the tunes and roll the credits. Once again, not the credits.